Alright, so before we can even get into today's road trip talk, we need to set the stage in a major way. This is the level Truth and Reconciliation from Halo CE on the Master Chief Collection. You saw that I turned off remaster visuals, and there is a reason for this. This section is being played on Heroic. At Heroic and above, players are tasked with defeating a total of 3 Energy Sword Elites. By this point in the footage, you have seen 2 of them. It will not be long until you have seen the 3rd, so let's keep watching. At this point, we have defeated the 3rd Energy Sword Elite, and we should be in the clear, right? Keep watching. You probably heard that just now, a cry from a 4th Energy Sword Elite. And at this point, you know that something has clearly gone wrong. Let's speed up the footage just a bit more. And there it is. Blink and you'll miss it, but as you spin around, that is Energy Sword Elite number 5. Now, the brilliance of this clip is that was not the glitch I was filming the section to show. The actual glitch, also on Heroic difficulty, occurs in the hangar when the enemies respawn an infinite number of times. And if you keep going, then after, say, 45 minutes or so, the entire floor of the hangar is going to be littered in bodies. At least 200 of them. It is fucking telling in the worst way possible that I could encounter a glitch on the way to another glitch. Yet the real tragedy is all of this could have been avoided if first-person shooters had taken an entirely different approach in terms of game design over 20 years ago. I don't even know how to talk about this one, but let's start with something a little more palatable. This video was actually not going to be about Halo, because it was actually meant to be about Call of Duty. So, story time. Back when I was in high school, I had a different account. And the reason I lost that account is because I sold my 360 just prior to college, and I had made a separate Microsoft account for the Windows Insider program. So, years later, when I bought an Xbox One, rather than try to figure out the credentials for that old account, I just said screw it and used the newer Microsoft account. But there were a lot of games that I had originally played in high school that I had a lot of achievements on, and this obviously included first-person shooters like Halo and Call of Duty. The thesis of this video was originally going to be about my attempt to replay Call of Duty 4 on Hardened because I had beaten it on Hardened when I was in high school. And sure enough, just the other day, I picked up the 360 version of COD 4 on sale and beat Hardened within 1 day. Achievement unlocked, I am no worse at the game than I was at age 17. However, while I was playing COD 4, I began to think about the first-person shooters that have come out in the era of the Xbox One. Because COD 4 was easier on Hardened than Far Cry 5 is on normal. COD 4 on Hardened was easier than any of the MCC Halo games on normal. And if I am still decently good at COD 4, then I should have been still good at Halo, but the 360 version of the Halo games is clearly not the same as the MCC version of the Halo games, which was completely proven by the video clip I shared at the beginning of this talk. So now is where we need to talk about why. The nice thing about not being 17 anymore is I can look at a game as I am playing it and get an idea of what mechanics the developers were implementing when they designed their game. With COD 4, I really honed in on the mechanics of checkpoint placement and enemy spawn rate. With most first-person shooters, regardless of if they are open world or completely linear, when you get into a mission, that mission is going to be completely linear. That is just how it is. You, the player, are going from point A to point B, and when you get to point B, there will be enemies in waves. You clear the first wave, characters give dialogue, you get a checkpoint, the next wave comes in, rinse and repeat. And after the final wave, you are told, go to point C. On paper, that is the basics of FPSs, but developers tend not to play by the rules when they can get away with it. When developers realize that the player can just pick off a wave from a distance and not be in any danger, that is when they start to implement bullshit. A common one being, players are denied a checkpoint until they cross a certain coordinate. This means the player must move forward, thereby placing themselves in danger in order to secure a checkpoint. But this, by itself, is obviously not enough. So developers implement the second degree of bullshit. Spawns will continue indefinitely until the player makes a move which advances toward the checkpoint. Meaning, not only is there a coordinate for the checkpoint that requires all enemies to be neutralized, there is a second coordinate which must be advanced to in order for the game to recognize that the spawns need to no longer be infinite and to trigger the final wave. This puts the player in a significant bind, because if they try to pick off enemies from a distance now, they will run out of ammo at some point, and victory will become impossible. What the player can do, and this is a last resort, is attempt to force the checkpoint by advancing so far forward that the enemies they evade simply despawn, which is essentially how you speedrun levels. You simply don't engage. But this is not always possible. If you have a situation where advancing forward is blocked by an in-game event, a cutscene, what have you, the player honestly has no conceivable option except to play by the developer's rules. Advance forward, trigger the final wave the correct way, and then trigger the checkpoint as normal. Meaning, if anything in the game's code were to break at this point, victory becomes truly impossible for the player. And that is the Halo scenario. The one that I mentioned about the hangar littered with bodies, not necessarily the 5+ energy sword elites, but you can make the argument that there is some correlation there, seeing as the spawns got screwed up and that particular wave was infinite as well. So what about Call of Duty? Again, that's what this video is supposed to be about. Like I said, the COD 4 campaign feels easier than a lot of FPSs do today. Yet there are 2 levels in COD 4 which turn all FPS logic on its head for literally the same reason in both cases. I am talking about one shot, one kill, and no fighting in the war room. So, one shot, one kill is the level where you try to take out Zakhaev with a sniper rifle. He actually retreats with one of his arms blown clean off, and you have to escape with your sniping partner, Captain McMillan. TLDR, McMillan breaks his leg, and you carry him to the LZ, at which point, the entire Soviet army bears down on you with the intensity of 1,000 suns. It is 2 people versus 200, and that is how it is designed. You have to wait for a helicopter to travel approximately 10 kilometers, and that takes roughly 10 minutes. To prevent the player from cheesing it, enemies spawn indefinitely. So for every 10 you kill, 15 more take their place. You are outnumbered. You are beyond outnumbered. And the icing on the cake, they keep spawning even after the helicopter arrives. That's right, there is no final wave. So you can actually fail the mission while being 6 inches from the entrance to the helicopter, which actually happened to me. I could not get into the helicopter because the ally NPCs were blocking the entrance, and I got shot to ribbons, meaning I had to do it all over again. A lot of it was luck. And the mission No Fighting in the War Room has the same problem, but for a different reason. In that particular mission, enemies respawn indefinitely, with the only goal being to slow you down. On Hardened, you have 11 minutes to get to the control room and put in the codes to abort a nuclear missile strike. On Veteran, you only have 9 minutes. I finished the mission on Hardened with 45 seconds left on the clock, meaning it took me about 10 minutes, 15 seconds. So you should be able to jump to the obvious conclusion that I would never be able to complete this mission on Veteran simply because I cannot get that time down any further. I couldn't do it when I was in high school, and I sure as hell am not going to be able to do it now. How exactly do I tie all of this bullshit together? That's the million-dollar question here. Not to be pedantic, but there is no such thing as a realistic FPS because these developers seem to have the insane belief that 2 versus 200 is somehow at all viable in the real world. Just to give some perspective, in the fictional movie First Blood Part 2, Rambo kills a total of 129, and that is certainly not all at once. 59 of those were flashback kills from the Vietnam War. Meanwhile, in most FPSs, you are taking out triple-digit numbers of enemies every mission. Just you and the occasional NPC partners who more often shoot themselves than the enemy. What are we doing here, people? There are people who claim that first-person shooters are military training simulators, but the problem I have always had with that assertion is they are designed to do combat all wrong. They favor reflex over actual strategy. Because if you could hang back and strategize your kills, that would be more in line with the real world. An actual 6-person team is going to want to go after a single target and keep extraneous casualties to a minimum. Because if you have 200 enemy combatants barreling down on your location, you are almost certainly going to die. Even one of the greatest war veterans of all time, Audie Murphy, who has entire films and books made about him, couldn't possibly pull that miracle off. During his heroic feat of using a broken tank destroyer's machine gun to ward off oncoming Nazis, he managed 20 kills in the first hour before reinforcements arrived, and they together took out another 50. And then Hollywood got a hold of that story and embellished the absolute fuck out of it. I don't understand. I just do not get it. So if I were a developer, how would I fix this? Actually, it's quite simple, and another game series has already done it. I would do spawn placement the same way that it is done in the Hitman games. The way it works in Hitman is there are triple-digit numbers of NPCs, with a good chunk of them having the ability to kill you. However, NPCs do not respawn when they are killed. There is a global maximum, and you can actually kill everyone on the map. There are YouTubers who make it their goal to do just that. I would rather see an FPS where instead of infinitely spawning waves, you have a global maximum of enemies. And the more of them you take out at the beginning of the level, the easier the end of the level is going to be. Or vice versa. If you speedrun past groups of enemies at the start of the level, they can rejoin the fight once you get toward the end of it. That is more realistic, by leaps and bounds. And getting back to that first scene from Halo, let me point out just one more thing. According to Wiki, the Truth and Reconciliation is almost 2 kilometers long. The USS Gerald Ford aircraft carrier is 337 meters long, so 1/6 the length. If the Gerald Ford can hold 4,000 people, then the Truth and Reconciliation can hold approximately 20,000 Covenant. According to the Wiki, accounting for vehicle loading capacity, it still held approximately 7,000 personnel at any given moment, meaning any attempt to rescue Captain Keyes should have ended only one way, with everyone, including Master Chief, going home in a body bag. I think I've said all I can say on this. If you listened, I appreciate it. I will say I did still enjoy the story of COD 4 to an extent, so it was worth revisiting while I wait for things like Motorfest Year 3 to roll out, but I'm not going to even attempt to beat COD 4 on Veteran. For me personally, I just do not see the point. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all in the next videos.